Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Parenting is Easy, said no one ever. I have a guest that I'm very excited about. What the topic is so apropos for where we are right now with our kids in starting school again. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Daniel Dluzneski. Am I pronouncing that right?
Dluzneski, yes.
Dluzneski, okay. Who has been working specifically with safety within our schools passionately in his county where he lives in Florida. He has been working with the Secret Service for over almost 25 years, retired, moved to Florida, and has since been working on making sure that our kids are safe in schools. Without further ado, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. It's an important subject that needs to be talked about more frequently, I believe.
Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons why, we wanted to have you on today, just to be talking about the concept of safety, but taking us back, from the work that you did for decades working within the Secret Service. I'm curious, just based on the concept of being able to assess a safety situation, and sometimes on a whim, how does one go about making sure that a situation is safe for their kids, whether it's at school or at home, based on your experience that you had within the Secret Service?
Yes, a very good question. And my Secret Service training obviously helped me when I got into the school systems. And a little bit of an explanation, when I got thrown into it, obviously I knew what I was getting into. I didn't realize basically just a lot of common sense stuff that was going on. And I wasn't given full autonomy, but I was given the opportunity to visit these schools and see exactly what was going on. I wasn't a desk person. I didn't want to be a desk person. I wanted to get out and talk to the principals, administrators, teachers, parents at these schools and see what their concerns were. And I have to back up because, as you know, and as most parents know out there, the majority of the concerns are the curriculum and teaching these children, especially after we went through the pandemic, after a lot of things that call for defunding the police. So now you got to catch up. And what's happening, as we know, these teachers, administrators, superintendents are under tremendous pressure to bring up the curriculum grades for not only their schools themselves, but for the students also, which are falling way behind.
For sure.
So what I found out was, and I found out this also when I work with the Secret Service, safety and security are way down the bottom of the list. When I worked for the Secret Service, we were just, I don't want to say we were just trying to push it aside. Okay, yeah, you guys do what you got to do, but please, there are events the president needs to go to. There are people he needs to see. There are areas he needs to go to. And we're like, well, wait a minute. Whoa. That's unsafe. We need to do this. So you got pushback in that ways. And it was a real, not a problem, but it was just something that we were used to. But still, we did the best we could of keeping the president safe, even though there were times that we would tell the staff, we really don't agree with this, but you would get pushback. So there was a lot of politics involved in that realm. When I got into the school system, same type of pushback. It was just a little different, except you realize that, okay, I understand you need to get your grade up in the school from whatever grade they're at, especially if they're a D or, God forbid, an F school, that they need to raise it to a B or a C. So they're under pressure for that. Teachers are under pressure to get the curriculum done. So when you go to a meeting, let's say, and it's full of the principal, staffers, and teachers, and you explain to them what kind of drills that we need to do to keep the schools safe, you get a lot of eye rolls because they're already thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to take time away from teaching these students,
learning,
from getting, and exactly, from learning. And you're telling me it's going to take an hour to an hour and a half? And what would happen, everybody's human. So what would happen is these schools would pre-plan. They would make sure it was announced. So they would say, okay, on this date, at this time, we're going to run our drill. Okay? So the teachers would get what I call pre-planning. So they would already have the lights turned off. They would already have the classroom doors locked. They would already have the students sit quiet because they want to get through this drill as fast as possible.
So things weren't done, by the letter of the law for what was needed for that safety training, and it was more like, all right, let's just check off the box that it was that it was done. And it sounds like for a lot of us parents, when it comes to getting certain things done, whether it's I have to take him back to the dentist, it's just something that I have to do instead of it being more than just a safety, but it's important and making sure that the mouth is taken care of properly. And I'm curious when you look at that comparison regarding how we as parents look things sometimes when there are certain priorities that are important for us as parents. And yet at the same time, when it comes to the school system, there are certain things that are essential and really, really important and should be a top priority, but yet it's sort of put on the back burner.
Exactly. And you do run into sometimes, not as much lately, of it'll never happen here philosophy. Oh, no, it'll never happen here. It never happened in our school.
So, okay. So on that point, I think that's a very, very good point, Dan, because I think all of us parents like, well, my kid's not going to have that issue, or, there's not going to be any predators in my kid's school, or, I have nothing to worry about. There's not going to be any gunmen coming into my kid's school. But yet at the same time, anyone that doesn't live under a rock knows that all those things are relevant and prevalent in every single school in the entire America, if not the world. So I'm curious, what can you say to parents that might still have that, and I call it, for lack of a better word, lazy parenting?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Doesn't matter what school you're going to, private school, church school, whatever school it is, you need to be prepared. And what I try to say is, look, yes, percentage-wise, it's not going to happen here. It's like getting struck by lightning. However, we still want to be prepared, and that's all it is. It's just preparation, and it's something very simple. It's something that, and we'll get to my book, which is just a guidebook. But basically, it's just, again, common sense. It's something that I want teachers and students, but mostly teachers, they're the ones that control the classroom, to go through the process of what happens during a lockdown drill. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but what's happening across the country is that everybody in safety and security wants to do something new. Okay, I got a new position, and as you know, when anyone gets in a new position, well, I'm going to change that. I've got to do something different. Right. We can't do the same old stuff we've been doing. So what they do is what's called options-based training, which means you will go to a teacher and say to them, okay, you've got two options. You can lock down, meaning stay in your classroom, stay quietly, the door's locked, we'll shut everything down, and we're going to wait for the police to come. Or we'll give you the option of running out of the classroom and away, apparently, from the shooter to a designated point outside of the school. So I always try to say, if you put yourself in the teacher's place, here you are as a teacher. Not only are you under pressure from 25, 30 kids, however many you have in your classroom, and I concentrate more on middle school, elementary school. Today's high school, they're adults. It's more like a college.
Is there a difference in the way we go about prepping security for a high school as opposed to a elementary?
Yeah, there is, because again, I'm showing my age, but back when we were in high school, you still were pretty immature. You hadn't reached puberty, whatever. Nowadays, look, they're adults, even though, yes, they're under 18, but I consider them adults, so they can think for themselves. They do have to follow procedure. But yes, your safety and security will be a little bit different for high schools than for middle school.
Okay, so maybe that's something that we'll get a chance to focus on either later on this interview, or maybe in a second interview. Yeah. But focusing on the elementary and younglings, I guess you say that is starting school now. A
teacher here again who's under pressure to get their grades up and stuff, and again, they just want to get this over with. However, when something happens, you as a teacher, you're saying, okay, there's an announcement. We've got a gunman on campus, or we're going into a lockdown, or whatever it is they put over the air, which I like to have them speak in plain language. There's a shooter on campus. We're going into lockdown. That's it. However, what's happening is that they will say, and this is on the teacher. This is not the teachers being directed by someone else saying, do this. So the teacher has to make that determination. Should I stay in my classroom, or go to this designated point and take my kids out of here and go over there because I heard the shots behind me. So the gunman must be behind me. So I'm going to leave the classroom and go over here. We're all going to run and we're going to go over there. So you're saying to yourself, what? Wait a minute. Why would you put the pressure on the teacher to make this determination? Every study out there, there's not that many, but there's a couple of institutes. One is called Safe Havens International, biggest research company in safety and security. It's run by a gentleman named Michael Dorn. Been doing this for 35, 40 years. He's a former Georgia police officer. Anyway, his research has shown, and a lot of research in the national security officers and the national psychologists, and actually the Department of Education. Lockdown is the main focus of what you're going to do if you have an active assailant on campus. That is still the number one issue that works. Lockdown. Doors are already locked. I emphasize that classroom doors should be locked throughout the school day. You turn your lights off, you close the blinds, you sit quietly, you silence your phones, and you wait for the good guys to come. And that's it. It's a simple process. Now, the pushback you get, and I get, they're sitting ducks. We shouldn't be doing that. They're just sitting ducks. We should have had them run out of the building. Okay? They're not sitting ducks. There are no one recorded incident where an individual broke through or shot through a locked door. And that was on a Native American reservation many years ago. So you're better to be in a lockdown because when a shooter comes through, it takes too long to shoot a locked door. They're looking for easy access. Right. If you've seen the video of the Nashville shooter, that person comes through and you see them checking all the doors. Locked door, move on to the next one. Locked door, move on to the next one. Unlocked, I'm going in there. They're looking for easy access, easy victims. If you've got a locked door, quietly sitting there, it takes too much time. They've got a clock in their head, even though they're crazy. They're not going to shoot through a locked door. So
I think one of the things also when it comes to going through, whether it's safety protocols, is also the level of fear that the children have, and obviously also what the teacher might have. And I'm curious, based on experience that you've had in the Secret Service, and thinking about that concept of not giving over that fear, but giving over the caution. What would be some tools that we can know as parents, but yet also teachers can know regarding that level and keeping down that level of fear as much as possible?
That's a very good question again. And I always emphasize, if you've got parents listening, ask your children what's going on. Even elementary school kids. What are they doing when you guys do a drill, a safety drill? What's going on? What are they doing? And it's easy to say, my teacher locks the door. We sit down quietly. And, we wait for them to come and unlock the doors. I really don't want them to say, we gather all together and we walk out of the classroom and then we go down the stairs, just like a fire drill, and we go over into the woods over here. If a student's saying that to a parent, the parent then should say, I got to go in front of the school board and find out what's going on.
So you're saying when kids come home from the first couple of weeks of school and these drills are being done, parents should be asking, okay, how are they going about these drills? What are they doing? Being curious about it in a non-judgmental way, and just saying, hey, how are you guys going about it? And then from there, if those safety protocols are not up to par for what actually is supposed to be in an active shooter lockdown, then what are the next steps that a parent should be doing?
Next steps is you go to the school board meetings and you ask. Now, I understand most of these school board meetings, you've got 3 minutes most of the time, and you're not up there to argue with them, just asking what is the protocol for when you people go into a active shooter or active assailant and someone's on campus. What are the protocols? That's all you're asking. And they say, this is what we do. We give the option of letting them be in a lockdown or to run out of the building. And then you can make the argument, Department of Education, all these experts have said, no, lockdown is your best option of doing this. Should not be an option. Should be the only thing that you do is lockdown. If they're not doing that, then I would be very concerned. And if they get pushback, fine. Now you're going to your legislatures. Now you start writing letters to the superintendent to state legislatures and saying, this is what's happening at my school. I want them to be only in a lockdown. And again, list all the experts, all the organizations that say, no, you should be in a lockdown.
So pardon the pun, in a way where you're saying is parents should be doing their homework for what is necessary for any of these lockdowns. And it sounds like it can't just be one parent opening their mouth, because it's a David and Goliath type story. Yeah. So how do we go about making it something that is bigger than just one person?
Even the PTA. Yeah, they've got the PTA, there's what they call SACs, the Student Advisory Councils, meetings with the teachers. And so I'm sure even the teachers, be saying the same thing, like, I don't want to have that option of running out of the classroom. It just, if you think about the scenario, I'll take elementary school, because again, I concentrate on elementary schools because that's your biggest school systems in elementary schools. And you get an announcement. Okay, we've got a shooter in the classroom. Now, if you're a teacher, you're thinking, how am I going to get 25 to 30 small children, gather them all together in a chaotic situation? This is not a drill now. You're not going to walk. You're not walking anywhere. You want to get out of that building as soon as possible. So as soon as you open that door to the hallway, again, not knowing where the shooter is, or even if you think where the shooter is, you're taking these children through something that is loud. You're going to hear screaming, noises. You may see bodies. You'll probably see blood. All these things for these little children.
Which makes it even more traumatic.
Exactly. Just to get out of the school. And do you think once they get to the end of that, they're running? They're not walking. You're running to get out of there. And you're going to gather at the end where that exit is. And don't you think you're going to pile up at that exit? You're going to get injuries. Anyways, the reason I backed off this run, hide, fight, especially for middle and high and elementary school, is because of the liability during the drills, just the drills themselves. Again, Safe Havens International has done the research, and they've had to go to court to be expert witnesses on the drills themselves for what's called run, hide, fight, and running out of the building and students being injured. During the drills themselves, it doesn't work. It just doesn't. It may work in a high school or a college situation. College is so spread out. It may work in that situation where, again, and we're going to back up a little bit. This run, hide, fight option was created by the Department of Homeland Security. There's a video out there done by the Houston Police Department that'll shows a gunman going into a business, and the narrator will say, okay, if you can run to a designated point. If you can hide under your desk, hide in a closet. If you can't hide and the shooter comes up on you, now you have to fight. Well, okay, fine for businesses with adults. Somehow it transferred over to schools. I don't know who thought about this, that this was a good idea for schools. What are little kids going to do with a fight? What do you mean? They had situations, it's beyond idiotic, where you had little children bring soup cans to school that apparently they were going to throw at this shooter if he entered the classroom. What? Well, What are you talking about? I'm going to have little 6 and 7-year-old kids distracting a shooter if he gets into the class. What are you talking about?
Okay, so you bring up a very good point over here. So it sounds like even when there are situations where, let's say, the school is not up to par for what the correct safety is supposed to be in these type of situations, what can parents do on their own to tell their kids, this is what you're supposed to be doing? Obviously, not being the outlier in a certain way so that you're different than everyone else. But at the same time, what can parents tell, and how can we be teaching our children what they should be doing in these high stressful and life-threatening situations in the school system?
Once again, we get into these situations, and I've tried to explain some of this. If something happens and the teacher says, hey, we're going to run, there's probably going to be 5, 6, 7, I don't know, maybe 10 kids going, wait a minute. My dad said we're supposed to lock down. I'm not leaving this classroom. I don't want to go. I want to stay here. It's safer here. So now you've got a teacher saying, no, you're coming with me. It's not going to happen. So I encourage parents not only to just stay on top of this. Look, I understand the priorities. You want your children to learn well. You want them to catch up. You want them to test well. You want them to improve. You want them to get there to the next level, or whatever it is. However, safety, if they're not safe, they're not learning. I mean, right. That's the biggest quote. If they're not safe, they're not learning. So that school to know that my child, you know, I'm teaching my child that if something happens, it stays in a lockdown. Don't tell me now that, oh, you've changed it around. Well, we're giving them the options because we're going to run out of the building. There's something wrong with that. Again, I know it's a tough fight because school boards, they don't want to listen to you. It's, you know, this issue now, which is happening with parents showing up at school boards for all these issues of, you know, what they call censoring and banning of books and the gender stuff. I understand that school boards are getting this pushback on this, but the safety should be number one priority. And finding out why you're running drills the way they're running. That's all. You're just asking a question. Why are you running the drills this way when every other organization expert says, no, lockdowns are what works?
Right. So, I mean, parents should be curious and really be on top of whatever Absolutely. It is that they can be within their school, and they have a voice. Basically, what I'm hearing you say is that they. But are there emergency trainings or videos that parents can watch with their kids, or parents can watch on their own and then give over to their kids that you would recommend, or could be a handout or a PDF to download that can give a guidance for what the proper protocols are in not just active shooter situations, but in general safety within the school system? Well, not to be my own ego. I have a book. Oh, yes. It's called First 5 Minutes. Yes, and we are going to post a link for that in the show note, in the descriptions. It's only 77 pages long. You literally can get through it in an hour and a half. And the reason I made it so short is because it's very practical, concise, exactly what you need to do, exactly what teachers need to do to learn this stuff. And it's something that I wanted to make sure not only do I have a safety plan in there, but I've got what's called a guide where they're little credit card size guides that you can download and laminate. And the reason I found that these credit card things work is because I've talked to doctors and hospitals. They have the same thing. You put it on your lanyard because you need it for your copier, you need it for an ID. Sure. It slips right in there. And anytime some emergency happens, we'll just call a lockdown, you're going to forget stuff. I mean, you're probably going to freeze. Your mind is just going to go blank. And you're going to do stuff and you're like, what did I forget? Quickly look at the card. Oh, I forgot to turn the lights off. Oh, I forgot to shut the blinds off. Something simple because you know, it's a chaotic situation that you just forget a lot of stuff. So you can easily look at that. But is there a card out there that, you know, people can find online that you would recommend? Nope. Not that I know of. All right. So hopefully someone listening to this can be inspired to maybe pull one out there on the market. You can take what I've got in the book. It's just, I have a guide in there for lockdowns, lockouts, a bomb threat, I think tornadoes, whatever it is. It's, you know, obviously it's very small and very small print, but just a quick little card that you can look at quickly and determine, okay, I forgot this or I forgot that. It's not going to be a full-blown thing that you're going to be able to look at. But again, the book is so short that you easily can look through it and say, okay, this is what we need to do. And I give the pros and cons of a lot of stuff in there that you're going to be dealing with. But again, it's all about just locking down. Sure. Now, I wanted to get back to where some parents disagree with the drills that are going on. They think that, or the student has told them that it's traumatic for them to go through these lockdown drills and maybe even these option run, hide, fight drills. It might be traumatic. If the student is so anxious about something like that, then yes. And I would obviously talk to them and find out why it's so traumatic to them. It may be something that they're scared that something's going to happen. I mean, again, I'm aging myself. When I was a kid, it was about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we would have to go out in the hallway and just duck and sit on the ground in the hallway and duck our heads down for a certain amount of time because, again, we were afraid we were going to get attacked from Cuba. And when I was a kid, when that happened, I didn't even think about it. You're out there, you're grab ass and you're fooling around with your buddies. Teachers are trying to keep you quiet. You didn't think of anything. Okay, let's just get it over with. We're out in the hallway now. Let's go back. Kind of like a fire drill. So I would number one, I tell you what, read the book. But number two, talk to your student and just see what's going on. Why are you afraid of the drills? What's going on? Is there something specific? And tell the school, I need to know when the drill is going to happen because I don't want my student there that day.
Now, I disagree with that completely because when something does happen, if or when, that student's going to be even more
Right.
traumatized.
Right.
I mean, once
They're going to
you
be
go
completely
through something
frozen
like this,
in that situation.
exactly. And I've dealt with hundreds of drills from high school, middle school, and elementary school. And to me, obviously, the elementary school kids, they're the ones that are going to listen because they're small.
Right.
They're not, I don't want to say naive, but they're small. They're going to listen to the teacher. And these kids, I've had schools where, luckily, they've got like a double coverage. They'll lock the classroom door, but they've also got a bathroom inside the classroom. So yeah, you got 20, 25 kids, and I'll come in and we'll unlock the door. Where is everybody? They put them all in the bathroom. So here's these 25 kids in this tiny little bathroom. And they come out with smiles on their faces. And I was like, you guys get a gold star today. You did a great job. I said, I couldn't hear a peep out of these kids. You don't hear nothing, which is exactly what you want during a drill or during the real thing. You want that shooter to think that door's locked. I can't see. I don't hear anything. Nobody's in there. Move on to the next one. You want to delay that shooter as much as possible with layers until the good guys get there. And I tell you, the Nashville shooting, even they shot out the glass doors. I understand that, but they had layers of security, and those cops got there and took care of business. I mean, that whole thing was a great scenario of how it should work. Now, okay, the principal should not have walked down the hallway, and got shot just like at Sandy Hook, because you're not. What are you doing? You're not an armed individual. We don't need to talk about that. But back to parents and the traumatizing of kids during the drills. Try to see if they can at least go through it. At least go through it, and calm themselves down. These teachers do a really good job when they go through these drills, especially elementary school kids.
And it happens to be in trauma treatment. One of the things that we talk about is body movement, and the way to get over it, to get through the things and to be able to process it properly is through body movement and through actually having parts of the body move in certain directions to help us relieve some of that stress from whatever situation that we're in. And I think that exactly applies over here too.
Right. And they make it not fun, but they make it like, okay, we're going to hide from the bad. They do kind of make a game out of it. And, the kids understand that. And it's just something really, again, percentage wise, it's not that many parents that pull their kids out. It's not that, but it is an issue. And I just wanted to address it. But it's important. And the more often you drill, again, it becomes more rote, where the kids, okay, we're doing the drill again. It's okay.
Got it. Sort of like the fire drills that we had growing up. We got used to it, and what tree is ours in the courtyard and stuff like that. I'm curious to hear from you regarding when teachers, when they're going through the drills and they see certain things, but yet they might be apprehensive to speak up to the principal, to how school is doing things. What would you recommend to teachers when they have concerns?
That's a very hard question, because I do get questions from teachers going, look, there's nothing I can do. Our school does the run, hide, fight. What can I do? There's nothing I can do. I'm employed. I don't want to, go against this because, they're going to, fire me or whatever they're going to do. And I don't really have an answer for that. If the school system and the school board says, no, this is how we're going to run our drills, your hands are kind of tied. I mean, yes, when you do have your teacher meetings with administration, you can bring it up, but a lot of them may be adamant about this, going, no, we had XYZ company come in and they told us this is the way we should run the drills, so that's how we're going to run the drills. So even if teachers, sure, I'd love for them to get the book and say, hey, we've got all these experts that disagree with that, and we should be in a lockdown when we do these drills. But I really don't have an answer for that, because again, they've got enough pressure on themselves.
Is it the teacher's responsibility for the safety of the kids? And if they feel that they would know what to do with it, it could be someone that their spouse is a cop or in the military, and they have a certain level of experience, unfortunately, with something like this. Yes. Are they allowed to take matters into their own hands, or do they have to listen to quote unquote protocol?
Again, good question. And again, if I was a teacher, I would, if I got tenure, I'm going to push back and say, no, I'm going to keep my kids in lockdown. If not, if I'm just starting out, I got to follow protocol. I got to do what they're telling me to do because I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, if I've been there for a number of years and I got tenure and I found out, through reading and research and stuff, going lockdowns are the way to do it, don't lock your kids down. I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense because you're doing the right thing. And I'm sorry, if you got pushback, then you got a lot of research and a lot of people that'll back you up saying you're doing the right thing.
And are there organizations or people that, if God forbid like that?
Well, I tell you what, right off the bat, Department of Education, easily go on their website and they will state on there, lockdowns are the number one issue of how you deal with an active assailant on campus. They may, I don't want to say wishy-washy, but they may politically say there also was an option to run, hide, fight. But I guarantee you it says the number one option is locking down, because the National Association of School Resource Officers, the same thing. National Association of Psychologists, the same thing. Lockdown's number one. I mean, these papers go back to the 90s after the Columbine thing. But they really haven't changed. They haven't changed their ideas of what works for an active shooter. Now, is there research out there or data out there? Not yet. It's just not out there yet. I'm sure there will be in the years to come some data, saying yes, 100%. You have to lock down. Run, hide, fight is just for schools. Doesn't work.
What would be one or two preventative measures that you would like to see put into school and school systems more than what you're currently seeing right now?
The one thing that's happening is, let's say an incident happens where there's a shooter at a school next door, maybe a state or a town next door. So parents obviously will be up in arms going, hey, what are we doing? What's happening? XYZ school over here just had a shooter. What are we doing here? And the pressure will build and build and build. So eventually the administrators will say, okay, easiest thing to do, we'll get metal detectors. We got a grant. We've got a system here. We have the people come in. We've talked to them, and we'll put metal detectors in, and phew, we're safe. We're done. Everybody's happy. Okay, see you later. Don't want to deal with this anymore. You parents go head home. We got it. That's what's called security theater. Metal detectors do nothing. It is a complete waste of money, a complete waste of time, because not only now you have to train your teachers with the metal detector, you've got to take the time to have these students come in through a metal detector. It doesn't do anything. If I'm a crazy person and I'm going to go in that school and shoot the school up, do you think a metal detector is going to stop me? No, I'm coming in. I'm going to shoot everybody up. The other thing is, what happens with this mindset of technology and metal detectors is, if someone wants to get a weapon in that school, they're going to get it in. It's going to be either after school hours, a door is propped open and their buddy lets their backpack in, a school event, a sporting event. They're going to get that weapon into that school somehow. Metal detector is not going to stop them. It's really a waste of money. Any of these parents out there, don't think that a metal detector solves any issues. It doesn't. It creates more issues, and it does not work. So stay away from technology. Preventative measures, very easy. Today and for forever, it's going to be the human factor. You have to train your staff and your teachers properly to know what to do in an event that something happens. Around the school, the number one thing is, once classes start, all doors are closed and locked. You would have only one entrance once the school day starts. The other thing is, classroom doors locked throughout the school day. An individual that wants to come in, any individual, I don't care who they are, they come into a lobby area that is secure, meaning they can't get past that lobby area unless they are allowed access. So once they come into that lobby area, they'll check in. I hope more than likely they'll be checked for any kind of criminal activity, which they have systems out there now that check that. As I think Raptor Technology is the number one that checks, if there's any criminal activity. If they're allowed in, you buzz them in. You hit a buzzer, or you go over and escort them inside. If not, there's only one way to go: out. Now, the other issue I've had is countertops. And usually what happens is something will happen, and then you got to fix it because you don't think about it. I had a parent who was divorced. It was the father who was coming to pick up his child. And this was at a middle school. And he was adamant about picking up his child. And the staff said, look, we don't have a card in our file that says you are allowed to pick up your child because there was a divorce battle going on. And the father said, no, I'm picking him up. Jumped over the counter, attacked one of the staffers, ran into the school to find his child. Luckily, that staffer wasn't injured too badly. But from that point on, we figured, wait a minute, these countertops are too low. It's open access. Anybody can jump the counter and get in. So we raised the countertops and we brought down glass from the ceiling. So now you just have a little slot on the bottom. And we got pushback on that. And I understand, because when you came in, it looked like a bank. I mean, it was very claustrophobic. It was very hard to...
Well, if anything, the things that are behind that glass are probably more valuable than what's in the bank anyway.
Exactly. And that's what we explained to parents when they came in and were taken aback by this claustrophobic feeling of this insulated area. And we explained to them, not only are you keeping the staff safe, but now no one can go in and injure your child by jumping over the counter. So that ended that issue there. So that, again, layers. It's all about layers of prevention. You want at least a 6-foot fence. You want only one entrance. You want a lobby area that's secure. And if someone does get into that school, classroom door is locked, and you want to make it harder and harder for them to go along and find open access. And by that time, literally, I mean, the police should be, less than 5 minutes away,
right?
Hopefully. Right. And most places they are. I mean, Nashville, they showed up within 2 to 3 minutes. They were right there.
Right. I'm curious. I know we've gone from talking about all the different preparedness and concerns, and obviously a little bit of advocacy that parents can work on as well, and who to speak to. There's another part over here that we touched on a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about regarding the mental health and well-being of the children as they're going through this. What would you tell parents or tell the schools to be making sure to be aware of when it comes to the mental health of children when they're in a active shooter, hopefully just a drill and nothing more than that?
Again, it's these teachers. I'm very proud of a lot of these teachers. They know their students. They know which ones are probably a little more scared than other ones. And I've also dealt with disabled, when you're dealing with kids in wheelchairs, kids that have issues with, getting around, kids with mental health issues. And I'll go back to explain. And I'll tell you what, we've had, in my county, we had 2 schools that dealt with children that had mental health issues. And I'm talking about, turrets where just, the yelling, just
Tourette's,
out of nowhere, kids in wheelchairs, disabled kids. And when we ran the drill, again, the principal that was there knew what she was dealing with, and she had been dealing with for a number of years. I tell you what, we ran that drill, and each of these teachers and assistants and kids that were there helping these other kids did a hell of a job. I mean, it was just amazing.
So you're saying collaboration and communication are key.
Absolutely.
When it comes to...
They knew what they were doing. They quietly, and I said, look, you don't have to be 100% quiet. It's okay. As long as we get them into an area where it's locked down and they're safe. And they figured this all out. And they had these kids, and the ones even with turrets, they're a thing. Because I'm the ghost. I would just walk through as if I was a shooter, listening, banging on doors, yelling and all this stuff. You didn't hear a peep out of these kids. And I tell you what, it's all about preparation to get these kids ready for this drill. And they did an excellent job. And it's the same thing I get at all these other schools. Now, when you we'll kind of back off a little bit. When you get to middle schools, a little different. And I say that only because here we are, these kids are going through puberty. They're
looking for autonomy in life.
Their systems are running on, all kinds of fuel octane. I mean, their mind and their body is going crazy with all these emotions and, estrogen, testosterone and stuff. So to me, when I went through middle school was the toughest. That was the toughest because they have a very hard time sitting still. They have a very hard time not taking it seriously. So I depended on the SROs. And I go into this category because my number one priority is SROs. SROs are school resource officers. And down here in Florida, fortunately, the legislature did pass legislation that said they wanted a school resource officer in every school in the state of Florida. Fortunately, my county you did get the money, and they do have a school resource officer in each of these schools. These school resource officers go through intense training, as much as a police officer would go through. However, it's concentrating on dealing with children and dealing with teachers. They are an advocate. Recently, I've seen some articles that say because of this defund the police movement, students will come up and say, I don't want to see the uniform. It makes me feel bad. We don't want police in our schools. What happens is after a few months, it's actually parents that come up and will say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I want those school resource officers back in that school. No, none of it. So what? So you're a little bit upset. Why? Because
so in a place that's not Florida, where we don't have that fortunate opportunity to have these SROs, what would you recommend as parents that we can try to advocate for in our school systems, whether it's private, public, or middle school or elementary?
Yeah, that's another thing that you have to go in front of the school board and say, look, why don't we have school resource officers in our schools, and see what the answer is. If the answer is money, okay, fine. Now you're going to your legislatures and finding out why not. But they are the number one thing you should have in schools today. And what we did down here was it depended on the number of students in the schools. If it was 500, up to 500 was one school resource officer. If it got up to 1,000, you get two. You come in. And again, they are an advocate, because what I've got pushback that, oh no, they're going to arrest our students, they're going to harass them, they're going to this, they're going to that. That's not what they're there for. They're not there to stop student fights. They're not there to spy on anybody. They are there to keep your students safe when something happens. They are an advocate, and they're an advocate between parents, teachers, and students. And I can't express enough how well this system works with them in place. And I'm talking about armed SROs. I don't want SROs that are armed. There's no reason for them to be there if they're not armed. So,
do you find that the safety preparedness is different in public school as opposed to private school? And if so, what are those differences?
Another good question. Yes, again, because private schools have a little more freedom to do what they want. They can bring in experts in the industry and say, tell us what you have. We want to see it. Want to listen. We want to see if we want to pay for your service, to see what we want to do. And also, again, but as we know, it's all about money. So if private schools have the money, they can hire school resource officers. They can hire these companies to come in and find out what's the best way to run their school. If there's things missing, they have them come in. Public schools, they can ask. They can have the local police department come in. Hey, run a thing on whatever you've got to run on. But that's what happened in Libs, and that's one reason why I left the Pinellas County school system, because the legislation here in Florida decided that the police departments should take over school safety, which I completely disagreed with, because police they're reactive. They're not proactive. Some maybe, but they don't have the time. They don't have the time to do that. They don't have the time to train people. They're out there arresting the bad guys. They're not. It's not a proactive system. Anyway, if again, the difference between the public and private schools, public, they're going to take whatever they can get, but they've got to listen again to the school board. They've got to listen to the school board, the superintendent. Private schools, again, you get a little more leeway, and it's a smaller community. You're going to be able to do more on the side of safety and security, I believe.
Okay, but as long as there still is that collaboration and communication, I think that sounds like what is key, which is like most things we talk about here on this podcast regarding our parenting growth that we're trying to accomplish is just keeping that open. I'm curious, as we wrap it up over here, are there questions or maybe concerns that are important for you to talk about that we haven't talked about yet here in this room today?
Yes, and I've got more than five I can list. Number one, and this not for parents specifically, but for teachers, is to keep yourself safe first. A lot of times, teachers, principals, they feel they're my kids. I got to go save them. I got to take care of my kids.
Right.
No, take care of yourself first. The number one priority when anything that happens is you keep yourself safe first. Then you can help other people. It's just like when you're on an airplane and an oxygen mask drops down.
Beautiful.
You get it on yourself first. Now you're good. Now you can help the child or someone next to you. Number one, you keep yourself safe first. Number two was SROs, if they're available. You want school resource officers in your school. And I mean, those are my number one and number two priorities. Other than that, it's just basically preventative measures and drilling more often. This idea that, all right, we'll run fire drills once a month, but the active shooter drill, I will do it once a year or once every 6 months. That's not going to work. And no one's going to learn from anything like that. You've got to drill more often to get implicit memory, to get that rote in there that I know what to do when something happens. A fire drill is that I want to say it's not specifically a waste of time. When's the last time a fire happened where any child was injured? It's been hundreds of years. Schools nowadays, they've got sprinkler systems. You got walls that keep back 3 hours. You got doors. You got fire extinguishers. It just doesn't make any sense, and they won't change the legislation to go to do more drills with active shooters. I would like to see at least one of the priorities is to have more active shooter drills run properly more often. And I know oh my God, it takes away time from teaching. Sorry. It's something that I think is a priority.
Okay. Well, I feel like there's a lot more information here, and I'm curious as we wrap it over here, and I have a few more questions for you, but where can people find you and what do you have going on right now?
I have a LinkedIn page. It's under my name. Obviously, I know I have a hard name, but you can look it up in LinkedIn. And on there, I've got my other podcasts and the information anybody needs. My email is on there. My bio is on there. If anybody's got,
and we will post a link to that and also to your book in our show description. Yes. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I feel like there's so many more things we can talk about. But hopefully, everyone is able to get out of this is there are things that are in place. There are things that we can do. And then as long as we do them together and we prepare and we stay proactive, our kids will be in the most safest environment that they can be. I'm curious to hear from you as a parent. Has there ever been a specific or maybe embarrassing or funny story that has happened to you as a parent that you don't mind sharing?
My son is now 17 years old. He's adopted. We got him from Vietnam. Anyway, he's doing very well. I mean, he's just a really, really good kid. However, when he was younger, and I'm going to say probably 3 or 4 years old, and just for backup, when I was a child, my father was very strict, and I was beaten. Anyway, when things that's a discipline from a long time ago, my dad. Right. So I said I will never do that. I'll never strike my child or take the belt off or whatever it is or swat at him. Anyway, one day where my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, was in the bathroom. Well, my son decided to go to the bathroom door and kick and pound on this door like he wanted to knock it down. I mean, just pounding away on the door. And there's my wife going, "What are you doing? Stop." So I came over to him and I said, I was really angry. I said, what are you doing? I mean, this is the first time he's done something like this. It just was like,
uncharacteristic.
Uncharacteristic. So I pulled him into his bedroom, and he's kind of walking away from me, and I swatted him on the butt. I just gave him a smack, which probably sent him up a couple of steps. And he walks up and he turns around, he looks at me and he goes, "That didn't hurt." You have to understand, as a parent or even as an adult, now your level has gone up even higher. You're going, "You little..." what do you mean that didn't hurt? And it just was this arrogant that you can't do anything to me. And like I said, he was only 3 or 4 years old. But
it sounds like it's something that really has stuck with you for the past 13 years.
It stuck with me. And you just want to punch the wall. And I just walked away. And I said, "Okay, just calm down." That's his personality.
Yeah.
And he's very independent. And but it's whether he's adopted or whether he's my own son, it didn't really matter. But you also want to see them be respectful.
For sure.
To your
for sure. But that's a great story, and I think one that some of us here on this podcast can relate to. I'm curious if there is a book other than your own that you would recommend where people can get more information on this very, very important topic that we've been talking about today.
I apologize. I haven't seen that, and the only reason I say that is because
how about like a podcast or a website that people can get more information?
Well, I tell you what, my mentors are Michael Dorn. It's spelled Dorn, and he's the chief officer of Safe Havens International. And you can easily Google them. It's called Safe Havens International. They're the ones who do the research. The other individual that I would recommend, his name is Ken Trump, no relation to the ex-president. He also has been doing this for 30, 40 years. He also has a website. I think it's called schoolsafety.com or schoolsafety.net. But you can Google his name, Ken Trump, and you'll bring it up. Those two are mentors to me. They've been doing it longer than I have. And I always go to them for advice on issues that come up.
Okay. We will try to find these websites and post the links to them as well, because I think they could be very, very helpful. My final question to you, if you can think of a parental superpower that you would like to have, but it has to be a mundane and everyday parental superpower, what would you like to have?
I know nowadays they call parents helicopter parents, but really my superpower, be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, you're not the first person to
fly
say
on the
that.
wall.
And why is that?
just to see what the hell he's doing in his room for 12 hours out of the day. Some of it you don't want to know, but some of it's like, what the hell why is he in his room this long? So yeah, definitely fly on the wall.
Amazing. Well, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.